Hello and welcome to Ski Lodge. Today I bring you a unique video as we have now completed the first milestone of our adventures, which is visiting all of the towns within 2 hours of our home in Pueblo West. Now that we've made it this far, I wanted to give you a brief description of our channel, explain some interesting facts and experiences we had along the way, and wrap up with some rankings of where we've been. Let's get started. I'll begin by explaining our channel and what inspired us to begin doing this to begin with. In 2021, my wife and I were preparing to get married, and in response I downgraded my job to something part-time. As a truck driver, the free time drove me crazy, and I filled it by exploring my home state in more depth, plus the kids were finally old enough to handle it. I began by making a map that highlighted the driving distance around us, then plotted some towns in a wheel-spoke pattern using Google Satellite and Street View to confirm whether it was worth a visit or not. Having worked in Trinidad and the surrounding areas for the past few years, I made it stop number 1 and we headed out on our first trip that August. Beginning with only pictures, we walked around Main and Commercial, then finished the day at Semino Park. We repeated this process 2 more times with Elizabeth and La Junta posting pictures on Facebook. Though limited to my own friends list, it was relatively successful and I decided to start filming the areas for memories to look back on. Not wanting this information to sit silently, I decided posting publicly would allow me to point my family and friends to it when it came up. I created a YouTube account using the name Ski Lodge, which is a long-standing family reference, then made and posted my first 5 videos about Trinidad, Elizabeth, La Junta, Lyman, and Castle Rock. Surprised is an understatement when I saw the Trinidad and Castle Rock video take off, gaining 1,000 views in the first month. I was initially planning to return to trucking the following spring, but changed my mind so I could continue building the channel and traveling around. From here the channel grew into what it is today with improvements made as we progressed, including the list of towns, video format, history details, ranking system, and maps. It changed from being documentation of our trips into actual documentaries of each town, with the most detailed history, geography, and information found just about anywhere, especially for the smaller towns which seem to lack coverage. As time and inflation have continued, I will likely return to trucking in the near future, but I do not plan to quit taking these trips or making these videos as I find joy not only in doing it, but also showing everyone what lies all around us within a short drive. Our trips with Ski Lodge have comprised of visiting 1 town per month for the past 39 months. These towns had to meet the qualification of being reasonable in size or relevance. In other words, they had to have a downtown area worth driving to that contains a park and local cuisine. With gas and time being so valuable, we weren't trying to drive 2 hours just to be bored and hungry. As time went on, I often included surrounding communities in my videos, but the visits themselves focused around one main place. We visited mountain towns during the summer and plains towns during the winter, not only for comfort but for safety, as my friends and family were in the same car I was. Split between 3 geographic areas, we visited 25 towns in the I-25 corridor, 10 in the mountains, and 4 in the eastern plains. Naturally, the mountain towns and the ones right next to them were the most exciting, eccentric, and scenic, often resulting in the highest ratings. Altogether, between every town and surrounding community we visited, we experienced 47% of Colorado's total population and visited 17 of its 64 counties, many more than once. From Pueblo West, we drove north on I-25 20 times to reach our destination, south 7 times, west on US 50 6 times, and east 5 times. The closest town to us in Pueblo West was Pueblo at just 11 miles away, and the farthest was Golden at 128. During our Denver trips, we were able to ride the light rail 5 times. Surprisingly, we spent most of our time in decent weather, though we always seemed to feel too hot or too cold. The temperatures were generally comfortable, with most trips ranging between 50 and 90 degrees, but we did endure 7 that were 45 or less and 1 that was over 90. We got caught in the rain 3 times in Fairplay, Morrison, and Woodland Park, but avoided the snow entirely due to postponing trips when it was falling. Some of the best geographic features we saw besides nearby mountain peaks were the Dakota Wall, which was visible in 5 different towns, the Aguilar Hogback, Huerfano Butte, and the Devil Stairsteps. We encountered 18 rivers or streams, many of which had multiple towns on our list along their banks, the most being the Arkansas with 9 separate towns. We visited 6 scenic overlooks and saw well over a dozen iconic buildings, including the Colorado State Capitol, Bishop Castle, and the Holy Trinity Church in Trinidad. In addition to all the cool things we witnessed, several weird things happened to us too, like getting flipped off by a homeless lady at the downtown Denver playground, coerced by a couple in Fairplay to join their pyramid scheme, run up on by several unleashed dogs, nearly hit on the sidewalk by a careless driver in Manitou Springs, witnessing a wildfire begin in Cripple Creek, and provided free beers for no reason whatsoever in Rocky Ford. The one that rattles me the most was when our trip to Colorado Springs fell on the same day as the Club Q shooting. The town we never went to but got asked the most to visit was Gardner with 3 separate requests. If we could move to any one town on our list, the answer would be Castle Pines. We felt Cripple Creek was the most overrated and Trinidad the most underrated. Roxborough Park is somewhere that we covered in a video that we never actually got to see despite wanting to, and trying the water from the mineral springs in Manitou Springs was my personal favorite thing we got to do. The most interesting historic tidbit I came across was that the Fountain of Youth was called Cibola and supposedly located in the San Juan Mountains. Something I hope to learn more about in the future is the pathways of the former Colorado Railway System, a network which seems to be lost in time. The oddest coincidence that occurred was placing Parker at number 20, then finding out its nickname the 20-mile town. And finally, I kept track of the town name keywords, and of the places we've been so far, Wood was the most common, with 4 different towns containing the word in their name. Close competitors were the word village, park, and then color references with 3 each, and oddly enough, several of the towns with these names occurred in multiple categories. These were the most interesting things of our travels so far that don't get into the ranking system. I never knew there would be so much to experience in places I've heard of or passed through all my life, and I'm glad to have gotten these memories from going to them. The way I see it, Colorado is my homeland, and it's my duty to get to know it. I'm sure many are interested in my ranking system, and it's actually very straightforward. When I started this channel, ranks were based around the wow factor. When I walked to places downtown, many of them caught me by surprise and received high marks because of their impressions. As we continued traveling, I realized this wasn't sustainable as there are so many places that hold this effect. The first 10 towns were fairly easy to rank as they were all in extremely different areas and of various sizes. Trinidad, the first town, became number 1 by default, but then we visited Elizabeth and my wife fell in love with it. Though it offered very little, she kept insisting I keep it at the top despite superior towns being visited. By the time we hit number 15, it had to move. Not only did I disagree, but I would get questions asking why it was so great. The solution became to view it as, would I want to return? And this helped significantly by weeding out the places that looked good on the eyes but had no substance. Even though Elizabeth was a great little town, when asking myself if I wanted to go back, the short answer was no, as we had seen and done and there was nothing more for intrigue. I rewrote the list and it quickly dropped down to number 9. As we kept hitting new towns, it fell lower and lower. Now that we have completed the 39 towns within 2 hours, I can reflect on the ranks with confidence, knowing if someone asks me the best nearby town, I have a good answer with lots to back it up. I'll put a detailed list at the end of this section with all 39 towns ranked in each category, but let's stick with the ones everyone really wants to know. The best, the worst, and why. The top 10 is filled mostly with mountain towns, as they have the most personality regardless of scenery. Number 1 goes to Manitou Springs, a small community just west of Colorado Springs. This is the town I would recommend every Coloradan visits as it contains a bit of everything and is super close to I-25, aiding convenience. The buildings are historic, the history is interesting, and it has so many things to do. Number 2 is Woodland Park, and maybe it's because it seems to contain a bit of Manitou's charm. Similarly, it's not too far out of the way, and it has an excellent park, lots of good food, and the weather is extremely comfortable in the summer. Third place goes to Buena Vista. Even though some like to say it's like a small Salida, Buena's vibe is better. The outdoor recreation is also better, it has plenty of shops and restaurants, and it's close to the beautiful mountains and St. Elmo, a famous ghost town. Fourth place goes to Canyon City, which we all like for its mature trees and shopping. Main Street takes an entire afternoon to walk, it's really close to the Royal Gorge, and it has Skyline Drive, the best scenic overlook we've encountered. Fifth place was presented to Golden. Sometimes called the Manitou of Denver, it's eccentric, convenient, and scenic. Coors Brewery is found here offering tours and it has several outdoor options to stay busy. 6 through 10 consist of Cripple Creek, West Cliff, Colorado Springs, Fairplay, and Salida. Though I won't get into their details, I highly recommend visiting each one. On the flip side, we have our least favorite, or rather, the ones we would not like to revisit. 10th on the list will likely draw attention as it's Beulah. Beulah is actually a popular town for visitors, but we found it boring and private, making us feel out of place. 9th, 8th, and 7th go to Rocky Ford, Fountain, and Inglewood, which are all a bit run down and even a little sketchy. 6th is Falcon, a railroad town turned into a modern suburb. It had nothing to do, no scenery, and was very unwalkable with no sidewalks and large distances between buildings. 5th is Wassenberg, a rather ghetto small town. It makes up for its low population with a high crime rate and is generally filled with opinionated nobodies. 4th is Lyman, which was nice for what it was, but is just too small, boring, and far away to be worth the drive. 3rd is Aguilar, which I hate to say as I personally like the place, but the downtown area is struggling and it has nothing to do indoors or out, plus the residents are not the most welcoming. 2nd is Los Animas. From the moment we entered, it felt like everyone knew we weren't from there. We encountered drug addicts on the sidewalks and got run up on twice by unleashed dogs scaring the kids. There is absolutely nothing to see, natural or man-made, and even less to do. We were uncomfortable the entire time, made worse by the fact that I had a camera out filming. Finally, and the one you've all been waiting for, the worst town on our list was Penrose. This was disappointing as it's actually the second closest town to us in Pueblo West. Penrose was so bad to visit that not only did we cut the trip short and leave early, but I separated it from its counterpart Florence and removed it from the list. I've already been criticized in the comments of the Florence video about my stance on Penrose, but my mind can't be changed. I'm sure there's good people there and that it could be a decent place to live, but we will never get the chance to experience this as we will never go back. We were isolated by the residents, violated by their dogs, and disappointed with their main street. We were watched carefully by everyone we encountered and felt the entire town was run down with absolutely nothing to do. I would not recommend going to Penrose if you don't have a set destination. It's very unwelcoming and primitive. In addition to this overall ranking list, we have other lists regarding things to do, shopping, and scenery. Unsurprisingly, Denver was the town with the most to do, far surpassing any other, and Penrose was the town with the least. Our own town of Pueblo West had the best playground, and downtown Denver's was the worst due to the aggressive homeless. Littleton's Stern Park was the best overall park, and Ratone's Ripley Park was the worst besides the 5 towns that didn't even have one within walking distance. Manitou Springs offered the best local shopping, and Beulah had no shopping at all. Finally, Cuchara and the Highway of Legends wowed us with its scenery, whereas Rocky Ford was in a low-lying valley with nothing to look at. Of course, it's worth noting that these were our opinions, and that results may vary depending on the day, the person, and their interest, but I feel we were fair with our decisions, taking numerous aspects into account. If your thoughts differ from ours, feel free to comment on this video. Here's the full list of each category for you to look over. If you've made it this far, that means you're a Colorado diehard who appreciates my opinions, and therefore I appreciate you. There's so much to love about this state, and I've had the best time exploring it. The next chapter is towns between 2 and 3 hours away, and is on track to be even better as it will really start getting into the big names with places like Boulder, Breckenridge, and Gunnison. I'm looking forward to expanding my knowledge and making more memories with my family in this great state I call home. We're Ski Lodge and we're exploring Colorado one town at a time. Thanks for watching. See you next time.